Hello everybody and welcome to another amazing video of DIY investing. We've been talking extensively about what we need to see for the bulls to take control of this short-term correction and send Bitcoin into a new high above 50K. For today's video, I wanted to take some time by going back over that same scenario, but then also covering the bearish scenario if in fact this ends up being a false breakout and then the bears end up knocking us for one more low. We should expect that the next few weeks are going to be a very volatile time for Bitcoin, one way or another, and so for today's video, I'm going to break down exactly what I'm watching for and how I'm preparing inside of my trading plan moving forward from here. Thank you guys so much for tuning in, and with that being said, let's jump right into this amazing video today. Alrighty guys, here we are to start off today's video, and we are going to be jumping straight back in with some of my prior analysis. What we've been talking about is whether or not Bitcoin was going to end up holding this breakout, or whether this breakout was going to end up turning into a false breakout, falling back down below this main trend line. Now is the most important time inside of Bitcoin's accumulation, because now we are at the last line of defense for the bulls if in fact we are going to end up seeing a reversal. Now what we talked about when we were consolidating up here was the potential where we reject and then fall back down to this trending support, and from there we would determine whether or not this is actually going to be a reversal or whether this turns into deviation on the big picture. Now what I mean by that is, generally speaking, whenever we see a breakout from descending resistance, it's not unheard of to see the market correct all the way back down, erase the beginning of that pump, and then come back down onto trending support. Now remember, the only way to determine whether or not a breakout is actually true is whether or not it holds new support. Remember, this is a downtrend. Every time we hit this, we saw lower lows. Every time we hit this, it produced a lower low until the point of us actually breaking outside of that right there. Now the question comes, are we going to end up turning this into support, or is this going to end up being somewhat of a deviation before we come all the way back down and end up closing back below that same downtrend? Now if we were to see the market hold a support right where we're at, we need to see this hold in order to see a sustained breakout and the beginning of the new high in this cycle. Now what we're watching for here, now that we're right here approaching the support, if this doesn't end up holding and we end up making another low and we close back below this descending resistance, this entire move, this entire breakout up here is going to end up being deviation. Now inside of deviation, it just shows that it was a false breakout. And then for the price to come all the way back down into the downtrend shows that there is a lot of weakness still in the market, and most likely we would be going for one more low, and it would be a pretty decent capitulation at that. And so the reason I'm making this video is to help remind you guys that we're at the final line of support for the bulls if in fact this is a breakout. Now keep in mind, what we're going to be watching for if this is a false breakout and this turns into deviation is one more final capitulation. And what that will basically look like on the bigger picture, we will be looking at an expanded flat correction. Basically what that means is that this entire move off of the lows up to about $31,000 was our first impulse of the cycle. And what we've been in for, the last 280 days approximately is just a lengthier period of consolidation before we see one more final sell-off to finish out this big picture ABC correction. And that's what I believe will be ending up playing out. This will end up looking like an expanded flat correction where the top of wave B ends up breaking out of wave 5, and then we still end up falling for one more low that ultimately goes below wave A inside of this support level. Because we've been consolidating above 25K inside of this range for a long period of time. And if we remember over in here, we've been inside of this consolidation for about 280 days. And so on top of wave A support, we've been wondering whether this was just some type of sideways, channel consolidation that was going to lead us to one more final high, or whether this was going to act as distribution before we see kind of a breakdown from this level and one strong flush back down, probably around $21,000. Now, we still don't know yet, and it's still possible for support to hold at this breakout point. And if that's the case, then we are expecting a run all the way back up to the range highs, basically being $30,000. Now, like I stated, if this is unable to hold and we see a pretty decent sized breakdown where we come all the way back down to pretty much that 25K level once again, then at that point I will be expecting that we are going for a lower low and we will actually break below the 25K level as support. That's what I'm going to be watching for moving forward, and I think that the best way to help you guys visualize what an expanded flat correction will look like is more or less what we just went through inside of our bear market. If we come up here and we take this entire consolidation and we come and overlay it with what we're seeing today, you guys are going to be able to start to see a lot of the same similarities inside of this current structure. And this is basically what I would be watching for the bearish scenario. And what we're looking at right now is, relatively similar as far as what we would expect to see moving forward from here, as well as what we've seen up to this point. Now, we're going to go to a 2-day time frame so it's a little bit easier to see. And then we're going to draw this up here. We're going to get rid of this. Now, inside of our current consolidation, in my opinion, it does look a lot like what we went through in our bear market, where we have the peak here, we make another peak up here, and then this takes us to that final sort of sell-off. And more or less where we would be right now is this consolidation, this first lower high, which was the same lower high that we went to at 50K. And then that took us to that final capitulation right here. Even though we went through another 6 months worth of sideways and one more final lower low with the FTX collapse, I don't really think that that's going to be the case with our current consolidation. I think that more or less what it would end up doing, this would lead us to this final sell-off right here, and we'd probably be going to around $21,000 to $22,000 before that is over. And it would look very similar to that same consolidation that we went through in our bear market. Overall, we'd be looking at an expanded flat correction. What that means is that you have wave A, wave B makes a high above the impulse, and then wave C ends up going for an entire lower low, and this is going to end up being our 5 waves impulse, right? Wave 1, wave 3, wave 4, and then we would be going into one more final sort of capitulation, which is more or less the same thing that we saw right here, leading into the Terra Luna collapse. So that's really the 2 scenarios that I see fit playing out for Bitcoin from here. Regardless, the prime thing that I'm still watching for, and I'm going to continue to still watch for, is whether or not this is going to end up holding a support, because we're pretty much right at that point. This could still be some type of ABC correction before we end up holding and then making another run back up to the range highs. But that's the last real scenario that I see for the bulls, considering the fact we've spent so much time consolidating around this 25K level, that if this ends up just falling back down to 25K again, then that shows that there's still a significant amount of sell side pressure. It shows that the bulls were unable to hold any sort of meaningful breakout. It would also end up showing that 25K is going to end up failing as support, because we've spent so much time at this level that if we're unable to get a breakout pretty much right now, I don't really anticipate us actually doing so. We've spent so much time here. We've had multiple different reactions around this 25K level, especially going over the last couple months. We had multiple different attempts at a breakdown off this level. None of them were actually able to hold, which is what told me, when we ultimately got outside this descending resistance, that most likely we were going to end up holding the breakout. And so now we're approaching this support. It's really the last line that we have for the bulls, and that's what we're going to be watching for. A bounce ends up taking us back to the range highs, being about $30,000 to $31,000. A breakdown and a reversion all the way back down to this 25K level means that we're probably going to end up making a pretty sizable capitulation below, in the same way that it ended up playing out inside of our bull market. Because if you guys remember, I should say bear market, we had this 30K level as support, and once we ended up breaking down from pretty much the high at $48,000, that's where we saw a pretty significant capitulation that took us back down below that support level. And that's still what I'm going to be watching for from here. We've kind of had a similar consolidation so far that if we're unable to hold this, I think that the next sell-off that takes place is definitely going to be bringing us below 25K, and it's going to be a pretty quick one at that. Big picture, if that's going to be the case, what we're going to be looking at based off of a percent loss, we'd be looking at about a 30% drop, and potentially even all the way back down to about a 40%. I'm not writing off the potential that we come all the way back down to 20K. I don't find it as likely, but we have to remember that Fibonacci levels are going to be one of the key things for identifying when this correction ends. And the 618 takes us to about $21,500. And that's kind of still where I'm anticipating the market to bottom. Anywhere from about 22,000 to 21.5. That's kind of the area of demand that I see fit for a potential reversal and a buyback to ensue off of this sell-off. Overall, guys, so we're going to go remove our drawing tools and we're going to look at this just from the basic range that we've been playing for, 280 days approximately. We've been inside of this consolidation, right? If we pull up the date tool, we're currently sitting at over 200 days, about 208 days to be exact. So I don't know where the 280 days I've been pulling out of my head came from, but basically 200 days that we've been spending inside of this range. Now, if we're to see a breakdown, I think that it's going to happen really quickly because the main distribution is taking place right here if, in fact, the bears are still in control. And so if that's going to be the case, then I don't think that, we're going to spend a ton of time sitting here, and then if we sell off, spend even more time, maybe come back up. And then a lot of people are kind of assuming that we're going to be spending a significant period of time correcting here if, in fact, we're breaking down. I don't think that that's the case. In the same way that we had this really quick sort of a sell-off once we broke down from the all-time highs, I think that that's going to be the same sort of scenario once again. At the end of the day, a move all the way back down to 25K would show significant weakness. Shorts would begin to pile up at this level. And then I think that the sell-off would actually happen really quickly. Even if there was a lower high in here, I still think that overall, that main part of the sell-off is going to happen really quick. And it should be a very quick and sudden impulse, considering the fact distribution is taking place here. The capitulation is always a quick event. It's not really something that takes a significant period of time. It's something that generally plays out in a much faster way because of the fact the main profit taking is taking place up in this level. It's taking place up in this range. So if we're to see a sell-off, there's really not any buy support because we've been sitting on our true support at 25K for all of this time. We've had all of these different attempts on top of this level. So once this actually breaks down, we really don't have any real support until, like I said, probably back down to this 618 Fibonacci, which is going to be taking us back down to more or less where we bottomed at our initial run up before the breakout of 25K, and then also taking us into the resistance that we made right into that FTX collapse. I think that that's really the most important area of demand inside of our chart, and it really won't have any true support until we get all the way back down here. From where we're at today, or what I should say, from about this 25K level approximately, we're looking at least a 15 to a 20% drop. And that's, until we find an area of demand in the chart. And so that's kind of what I wanted to give you guys this update on, just more or less reiterating some of my thoughts. We're at the last line of support for the bulls. If this is a breakout, we pretty much need to be holding where we're at right now. If this ends up falling all the way back down, we see a pretty big sell-off back to this 25K level, then at that point, I think that it's a confirmation that we're going to be going for a very quick and sudden capitulation, probably back down to about $22,000 and even down to about $21,500. Anyways, guys, this is the update I had. I'm going to continue to give you guys some more updates as we follow. Tomorrow, I wanted to go over the big picture market cycle, but because so much of our analysis is playing out, I wanted to make sure I gave you guys an update as far as what to expect with what I'm seeing so far. Anyways, thank you all so much for the support. If you found value, leave a like, comment, and subscribe. Hit the notification bell so you don't miss out on any of these updates like the one provided for you here. If you guys want to end up following anything that I'm investing in, anything I'm looking at going into this next cycle, whether it's DeFi, whether it's altcoin picks, or NFTs, links are in the description to go ahead and sign up on my website. It's a lifetime membership. As long as I'm doing this channel, as long as I'm investing, you guys are going to be able to have access to that. So make sure you check it out. And with that being said, I'll catch you in the next one. As always, peace out.